All right, let's talk about Afghanistan now. It has been months since headline news on your televisions every day where you saw American forces at the Taliban, at the Kabul airport, surrounded by the Taliban, taking people out of Afghanistan, trying to evacuate people who had worked with Americans who were in harm's way. The stories moved to the back pages, but I'll tell you what, it has become more dire. The situation is a very big crisis for so many Afghans who cannot get out of Afghanistan, who are trapped, some of them being hunted by the Taliban because of their previous relationship with US forces or NATO forces. And there's a guy named Brian Stern who joins me now. Brian, I believe you're in New York right now.
Yeah, Dana, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm in New York right now. We're getting ready to launch tomorrow, probably. We're having some challenges this morning, but
right. So I have to introduce you a little bit better than there's a guy I know called Brian Stern, because you are running a project called Dynamo, and you are one of the few organizations that have actually been able to get some of these people out of Afghanistan with their kids, with their families. Tell me how you're doing it, and tell me how critical the situation is right now.
I'll answer the question in reverse. How critical is the situation? It's dire. We're seeing all kinds of indications from inside the country, inside Afghanistan, both geopolitically, economically, culturally, and even with things like weather. The winter in Afghanistan is a very, very, very real thing that impacts the entire country. So from a ticking clock perspective, there's multiple facets of the situation, all of which are indicating bad, not good.
Right. I mean, all Afghans will face a horrible winter. All Afghans will face famine conditions in parts of the country. They are going hungry. The economy has collapsed. But the people you are helping in particular are, I assume, are people who have had relationships with U.S. forces in the past, because you're a veteran.
Yes.
And you have worked with some of these people.
Correct. So the Project Dynamo was predicated on the idea of don't be a spectator, right? So things went bad and we wanted to get close to the problem. The people that we're helping are anyone and anyone that we can. And how are we helping them? In any way that we can. Sometimes it's by airplane, sometimes that's by border crossing, sometimes that's in a car, sometimes it's in a foot. If there was by foot, if Afghanistan wasn't landlocked, I'd be using rowboats too. So we tend to focus on the aviation piece because I can move a large amount of people in one shot. But
Before
the reality
we talk about
is,
how, will you just talk to me about who? Will you give me some examples of the kinds of people you're in touch with that you've helped and that you're getting out or need to get out?
Yeah, so we have a database. ProjectDynamo.org is our database. That's where you can donate. We are donor funded. A little plug. That's also where you register. So if you're an Afghan, you're an Afghan American, you're an Afghan Canadian, Euro, whatever you are, in country inside Afghanistan, that's where you go and register and upload your documents. The people that we're focusing on tend to be wrong to say any one demographic, but we have to chop into tranches, if you will. So American citizens, Canadian citizens, British citizens are on my next flight. I also have green card holders, also known as LPRs, lawful permanent residents, of Canada, of England, of America. I also have vulnerable populations, such as journalists. We have a manifest of a number of journalists who were Afghan TV journalists who did nothing but slam the Taliban every single day from a media and journalism perspective, trying to demonstrate freedom of speech and the power of the press and all those things. Their faces are known by everybody. They're Googleable. And if you Google them, it comes up as anti-Taliban stuff. They too are in country. We have all kinds of groups that are vulnerable. We tend.
What about policemen? What about soldiers? What about special forces, Afghan special forces? All of those, I assume.
We try to help them also. We try and help everybody. If I have a way to get somebody out and they need to be out, we try and pursue it. What I'll say is that what we've seen is that there's a lot of people who are just as vulnerable, if not more vulnerable, who were not kinetic, meaning Afghan judges, Afghan lawyers, Afghan journalists, people who were not soldiers per se, who were in their own right against the Taliban by with and through our influence, our policy in 20 years of war. So yes, we care and have moved many Afghan national security officials, high level people, Afghan intelligence officers, all kinds of folks. But I'll say that if I had to pick an Afghan journalist or an Afghan commando, the Afghan commando in many cases can take care of himself. Maybe his family is a problem, but if you're a female Afghan journalist who is all over TV and you're trapped in Afghanistan and you're surrounded by the Taliban, you don't have a lot of help and you certainly don't have the training.
Tell me how. Do you get them to the border? Do they get there themselves? How do you get these people out now?
So the genius of Dynamo, there's lots of groups out there, and all these groups are doing the best that they can with what they can in a very, 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 very hard environment. There's no funding. Money is dried up. Donor money is dried up. So we're all working on shoestring budgets. The answer is we move anyone any way that we can. The genius of Dynamo, unlike a lot of other groups, is we call it the mousetrap. Meaning, once we start the process with you, you're an Afghan Canadian and you're in downtown Kabul and you don't want to be in Kabul anymore because that's bad. And you want to end up in Canada, you enter into our process. And from safe houses to buses to COVID tests to measles shots to buses to where you need to go to flights to where you need to go to wherever it is, we don't really stop until you get to where you need to be. So
it sounds mind-boggling and tremendously challenging.
It is challenging. It is challenging, but we've really cracked the code on a lot of these things. And notwithstanding funding, we could move thousands of people a week if I had money. So we've cracked the code on a lot of these things. It's a dynamic situation, meaning via land crossing as an example. Today, the Uzbek border is closed. Who knows? It was open last week. Who knows what tomorrow will bring? So, it's dynamic and it's fluid. We're able to shift and lift and spar and parry and roll with the punches in such a way that once we kind of start with somebody, we know that we can finish. Via airplane is the best way because we can move a really large amount of people in one sitting. Our last flight was 113 U.S. persons. Every single one of them
helped. And where did you help them to? Because they're not guaranteed getting to the U.S. or Canada, right?
Correct. So we don't know how many people we've helped. We don't keep. It's not a. We don't. I know how many people I have left. We know it's a couple thousand. There's a whole bunch that we can definitely verify, and it's easy to track those. But there's many that we've touched where our fingerprints are on them that it was simple assistance. It wasn't necessarily a rescue. It certainly counts. We certainly had a hand in saving their lives and all that other good stuff. But our passion is not making phone calls. Our passion is getting on the plane, meeting the people, and executing the operation.
How many people have you actually flown out, and where did you fly them to?
Our last big flight was 113 people, and they landed in Chicago.
And will the U.S. take them?
They're Americans. They just went home.
So those are the easy ones. Those are American passport holders, right? But what about what about the guy who was a fixer translator with U.S. Special Forces?
So a lot of those guys go to third-party countries. What people call lily pads, which is go to a place until your visa gets approved.
Yeah.
Rwanda, Georgia, Albania, Abu Dhabi. We're looking at some options in Colombia, in Latin America, Colombia being one of them, Panama being another, Brazil being another. We haven't executed those yet, but we have people all over. Greece has taken people. Ireland has taken people. I think Cyprus took a few. So countries are taking people, but the reality is there's 35 million people that live in Afghanistan and 34 million want to live somewhere else. So it's a very dire situation. It really is. And people, I think a lot of people have been very critical, especially of the American government, but of the ally of NATO, of, 20 years and, you left it worse than you found it and made no progress. And I reject all that. That's just not true. I spent a lot of time there, and there was a time where people wanted to stay in Afghanistan. 20 years later, no, with the Taliban, there was a time where people enjoyed Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. Today, that's clearly not the case. So without doing any hard math, at the very least, the influence piece worked out just fine. Militarily and politically and all those other things is kind of complicated. But every Afghan woman that I've ever met talks about school. Every Afghan child that I've met talks about school and education.
Your point is that these are permanent positive changes that have happened in the country, and that's a legacy.
Absolutely.
So how are you able to maybe cut a few corners and get it done quicker?
We don't cut it. So number one, Dynamo doesn't break any laws. We're not smuggling people across borders. And I didn't mean to imply that. I just mean maybe you're a bit lighter and faster on your feet. Like anything else, right? If you're a private organization, it's all about the getting. It's not about the bureaucracy piece. I hate spreadsheets. I hate memos. I hate PowerPoint. I hate all these things. And in government, those are requirements. Those are necessities. There's oversight, there's approval, there's tax dollars. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I think I appreciate that there's oversight as to how my tax dollars are spent. I appreciate that, right? We're donor funded. I make sure to track every single penny that we spend because I assume that one day a donor is going to say, hey, where did my money go? And I want to be able to explain to them. So as a private organization,
you're able, from the point of contact of somebody in trouble, you're able to get them out much quicker.
Exactly right. We see this in the military. Who's more of a lethal force, a battalion of infantry or a platoon of special forces guys? Depending on the day, those special forces guys might be, even though smaller, more combat effective, just based on the way that they operate and are organized and man-trained and equipped. That doesn't mean that they're better or worse. It's a function of ability.
Brian, I know you got to go. The last question, how can people help you? I mean, I don't think you're talking about huge amounts of money, but chartering airplanes is not small amount of money either.
Yeah, so projectdynamo.org, we take every kind of funding that there is. We have Venmo, we do wire transfers. If you have money, we want your money, we need your money. The planes don't fly themselves, the landing clearances are expensive, food and all the safe houses and buses and COVID shots, COVID tests are $150 a test in downtown Kabul. We are the proud owner of the only COVID PCR rapid test in the country, and it's $150 to do the thing. MMR shots are $107 a piece. So everyone who gets on, when you come into the process, everyone gets a COVID test and everyone gets a measles shot without doing any hard math. It's a couple $100 per person. So we need help financially in a very real way. Tactically, I need people with money to give, to be kind and help with this, or people who have big aircraft that don't mind flying into Afghanistan. I'll take either one. Those are both okay for me. But we're focusing on our next manifest is British, Americans, Canadian, and British, either citizens, children, green card holders, and we have a bunch of vulnerable people also that we're doing a cross-border operation with. We hope to move 300 in the next 2 weeks.
Brian Stern, thank you so much. Good to talk to you and good luck.
Thanks, Dana. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.